right? So now we've left 99.999% of the population behind. And so I'm just speaking to you, mostly those of you who've already had this experience and you're trying to figure out what was it and how do I do it again? Okay, because that was my story. Something happened to me. I wasn't on any kind of a pathway to learn about spiritual sex. Hey y'all, Craig here, Subtle Energy Mechanics. Welcome back to my page, or welcome if you haven't never been here before. Today I'm going to make another video about intimacy. And intimacy can be sexual, non-sexual. What happens with people? And with my work, I work as an intimacy coach, whether they're somebody that's got trauma and I'm working one-on-one with this person, and I'm actually connecting in an intimate, non-sexual way with people right over a Zoom call in a way that seems spiritual or meditative or energetic. And what does that mean? And what that means is there's something we're seeing on the outside world, something's happening out here, that something's changing in the real world, three-dimensional world, based on something I'm doing or you're doing inside the head, or sensing inside the body. So I'm taking my focus and I'm aiming it not outward. I'm still observing outward, but I'm actually doing something internally and watching an external expression of physical three-dimensional reality that's changing based on what I'm doing internally. And that's this one right here. It goes up and down, and we see this internally. So that's where we go from scientific reductionist to over into woo-wooville, and the spiritual meditative approach. This is the most fun game I have ever come across because it's real. We can reproduce it. Been doing this for years and probably over 60, 70,000 client sessions now at this point. And some of my most fun clients to work with are couples. And what I've noticed are couples that, well, some couples I've worked with have been divorced for a while. They're married for 20 some years and then divorced, but still have that sense of like, there's still something here. And we just can't figure it out. We just can't figure it out. If we figured it out, then many of the other problems that we've been having go away, or they get kind of reprioritized. And so I'm just gonna talk here for a couple of minutes about why that is and what I've seen, and maybe those of you who are highly sensitive, neurodivergent, intuitive, knowing that you live in some kind of limbic zone where you see this patterning in the real world, and it's definitely connected to something going on in here, but nobody else seems to be talking about it in a way that makes sense. So how do we put this damn world together so that it makes sense? And maybe if you're actually physically ill or sick and you know that there's some kind of energetic spiritual connection to it, and you're trying to figure out how to put this all together so that you can get through whatever shitstorm problem you're in right now and back to life, whether it's in your relationship or just in your relationship with yourself. Now, okay, I'm going to take these big words like yoga, tantra, kundalini, and dreaming. Dream, like there's three states of consciousness. There's waking, dreaming, and deep dreamless, and these models and maps that seem so esoteric. And what I'm going to say is, when you see the work that I do here, I'll just put a video right here where, again, you see somebody moving, and I'm doing something outside in a separate body, and then he or she's moving. When you learn to find each other in your imaginations, you can start to play on a different level, and it's not that hard. You just got to learn the game. Okay, what the heck is going on there? Am I transmitting energy from my body to them? No. What am I doing, and what are they doing? Does it hurt? Are they able to stay in awareness Are they controlling it? Am I puppeting them? And most importantly, how can you do this? How can you practice doing this? Because if you are highly sensitive, maybe neurodivergent, then you've got all of this tool set here and here, and maybe some of the anxiety that you are struggling with, or difficulty and conflicts that you're struggling with, is simply because you just haven't learned how to play with this divine spiritual tool set that you're walking around with. And so something is off. Intuitively, your body's saying something's off, and you're looking for how to learn this. So what I'm going to say is, one of the biggest questions that I put to myself, biggest questions, the main question I ask myself when I'm on a first call with a potential client, or I'm on a first date with a potential lover, is, can I find this person in my imagination? That's the question. And what the heck does that look like? So I can find you in real life because we're either on a Zoom call, or we're, sitting across from each other in a coffee shop or in a restaurant. But then can I find you in my imagination? Which means, if I go in, what am I feeling? And is what's going on inside my body, is it all me, or am I feeling something that's going on in you? And those of you who identify as highly empathic recognize this question. Like, what is this? I just walked into a room and there's an emotion in here that's not me, right? There's something that's maybe hugely dangerous that I'm picking up on. Or those of you who've healed a lot from that initial danger reaction, you may recognize, like, oh my gosh, I feel amazing when I'm around that person, or when I'm around this group of people. I feel amazing. And that's where we start to stumble on some of the design of us that's, in addition to being a separate me, we're a we. And we do pick up and feel in real time what's going on in the people in our proximity. And that opens up a whole can of worms around boundaries and safety and complex PTSD and relational trauma and things that didn't happen for us when we were growing up, showing us how to actually be healthy and boundaried and separate while being wide open and vulnerable and empathic. Right? These are big, big questions with this work. So when I find somebody, when I'm doing this work, or when you're doing this work, when you're with your lover, and this is for me the juice with intimacy, especially sexual intimacy with an intimate partner, is you're still face to face, you're separate bodies, and you're like, how are we matching our rhythm and our breathing and our movement together as separate bodies? But now add the additional layer of, I can find you in my imagination. You can find me in your imagination. And so just what you're doing with your awareness and your surrendering to some intelligence that's choreographing both of you at the same time. Now you're getting into the realm of religious or tantric or mystical sex, because you're tracking each other externally and internally together. And when that happens, when you find somebody in your imagination, you're over here, your partner is over here. The house of the imagination is this lower brain part down here. Now, when these two, the part, your imagination, your subconscious, much of that is regulated from the brain stem down all the way through the spine into the tailbone. Now, when you start to play with your imagination, finding your empathic sensibility, finding where you are in here, finding where somebody else is, something that you may stumble across is this, pointed at by this word, entrainment. Entrainment. And entrainment means your two bodies actually start to coordinate together, or autonomic nervous systems start to coordinate together rhythmically in time and space. And that's what you're watching on the videos where I'm actually working with clients. Now, as I said, this has a sexual component and a non-sexual component. I work with with women in my family and kids and animals, all getting our autonomic nervous systems to start to mirror each other, which has a hugely healing component to it. And I think is one of the biggest missing pieces in our medical approaches today is that we're skipping this part. We're actually getting our bodies to start to mirror each other and sharing information pre-linguistically so that our body starts to wake up in that cocoon or that nest or that bubble of being seen and tracked together. Like there's an incredible just laying down of the mask in that experience. And that's the same experience when the two, you and your lover, are actually coming together in an awake practice, an artistic practice that would be considered spiritual because you're doing something in your imagination in addition to externally in your bodies. All right, so now we've left 99.999% of the population behind. And so I'm just speaking to you, mostly those of you who've already had this experience and you're trying to figure out what was it and how do I do it again? Okay, because that was my story. Something happened to me. I wasn't on any kind of a pathway to learn about spiritual sex. But when it happened, and it was like waking up inside of a dream, and I didn't know that I had been dreaming. But I woke up inside this dream where it felt like that there was a personality, this like perfectly transparent shell that I had built. I didn't even know that I had built. I felt it. I saw it dissolve off of me, and I felt like this raw, perfect being that was actually awake next to another raw, perfect being. And it was the most amazing thing. I think one of the top 5 and most amazing experiences in my adult life. Felt like something that I remember feeling when I was a baby, where I was just being. But then over the years of growing up and adulting and living in this culture, we build this thing that's I didn't realize that I had built it, but boy, it dissolved and that was amazing. And like, how do I get that again? It was amazing because it was blissful, but it was also super scary because I was really vulnerable and I think that's the key there, is it was really vulnerable. So how do you find your partner in your imagination? It's the experience that's, I think, pointed out with the word yoga, which is union, right? And breath work. And what happens when you take a handful of mushrooms or psychedelics, that there's some kind of awakened travel down into the subconscious, and we start to realize it's not just lucid dreaming while you're lying there. Like everything comes alive, and this physical entrainment starts to happen between you and the others. And that happens right here. And so one thing I've noticed, again, with some of the couples that I work with, is that this is the missing piece. This is the missing piece that was maybe there and hinted at when the two of you got together. But then without knowing the rules of the game, because there are rules, just because you're going into the imagination, that there is an imagination component, but there's a real life 3-dimensional component to it as well. And that means you have to deal with actual anatomy and actual physiology and actual time and actual space. And when your autonomic nervous systems, your lower body starts to move together, now you're dealing with choreography and timing, which means you can accidentally come across this connection and see a glimpse and have the internal hit of like, oh my gosh, we're soul connected. It's my twin flame. We're meant to be together. And so you saw that glimpse, but it didn't stay. And so this is where some of the work that I do when I'm working with couples over a long period of time is teaching the rules of the game, is working with your intimacy as a practice, as a spiritual practice, so that not only can you get the glimpse, but you learn how to get to the experience where that separation, that boundary of ego dissolves, and you can then maintain that moment. It's kind of like driving next to a car on the freeway and you're just passing everybody, right? So you don't actually see them, you just pass them. But when you learn how to come up next to somebody and match their speed, your significant other or your kids, but it's really fun with intimate partners, is you learn how to match their speed in 3 dimension. There's a spiritual experience that then comes in there because you've learned how to play with time and space when you're finding them in your imagination and in reality at the same time. So you're doing something very specific with your imagination, with your focus and your attention, as well as your posture and the rhythm of whatever movements that you've got going on. And it's that combination that actually allows you to find somebody in your imagination and stay in an imagination creation with them. If this is speaking to an experience to you, let me know in the comments. If this is something that's interesting to you, because you just have to know more about this, feel free to reach out, send me an email, watch my little video down below that says if you want to work with me, watch that. I'd love to chat with you. I love hearing the stories about how people came across this work, or what issue in your life you may be convicted, you may have tried everything else and you may have to risk having somebody find you in their imagination. So happy to chat with you more about it. Thanks for coming over, and talk to you on the next one.